All right, so today I'm going to share my secret weapon with you. This is a script that I've been using that has earned me hundreds of thousands of dollars in real estate. And it works every time with everybody you're talking to, really in any situation. You got to adapt a little bit to different contexts, but it works every time. So if there was a magic script in real estate, this is it. I'm going to share it with you, and I'm going to teach you how you can use it at a very basic level, and then how you can scale it up over time and add systems around it, and you can run your entire business using this script, this framework, this foundation, this philosophy as the outline to do it. So there's really just 5 simple steps to it, and I'm going to guide you through which words to use inside the questions, and I'm going to give you the thought process and the framework so that you can adapt this to the specific situations that you find yourself in different scenarios, right? You can use this on the phone when you're making a real estate phone call, whether you're following up with a lead that knows who you are or you're following up with a lead that doesn't know who you are. You can use this when you're at an open house and you're just making small talk with someone. You can use this when you are at a soccer game and you're talking to the other parents there and you're trying to just work through the possibility of maybe helping this person with the real estate needs that they may have in their life. So for all of these situations, this script is going to be your best friend. So let's get into it. By the way, my name's Alan Reynolds. I'm from Modern Agents, and together with my lovely wife, Monica, we help agents from around the country leverage their time so that they can do more in less time, work smarter, not harder, and make tons of money in real estate while also living a great quality of life and having time with their families and to do the things that they like to do. That's our passion. So if you don't know, my background is in sales. I've had the blessing of being able to absorb over $100,000 of top training from different corporations. And I've really adapted all of that into some of the frameworks that we use inside our business and inside the conversations that I have with clients. So this script is based on a lot of training, and I'm going to give you some of the reasons, some of the psychology behind it as we go along. Now, I've personally used this script to make hundreds of thousands of dollars with real estate clients, and I still use it all the time, so I know it works. So before we get into the flow of this, the exact words, the script, the psychology of it, it's important to know that there is no such thing as a script that is going to make the person you're talking to buy or sell a house. It's not going to happen. But what this script does is it helps you to identify the person that you're speaking with. It helps you to identify where they're at in the conversation and how to help them through the process. And so it works by sorting people into categories so that you know who to work with, when, and how. But here's an example to show you the philosophy of how this works. If you've ever seen someone do a card trick where they ask you to pick a card and then they go through a process where they sort it out into different groups, and then by the end of like 4 or 5 steps, they fill up a card and it's your card, and they didn't use any magic, they didn't use any sleight of hand. It's just simple categorization, process of elimination, but they're doing it in a way that's difficult for you to follow along. And so at the end of it, it seems pretty amazing that you came up with, in reality, what was the only possible answer, but they're not quite sure how it got there. That's how this script works. It's designed to sort people out into categories very casually so that you can insert it into any conversation and people don't feel like they're being brought down a flow chart of options. They're just having a conversation. But you, as the person that's kind of leading them through this conversation, you know exactly where you're guiding them and what the next steps are based on their responses to these questions along the way. If you'd like to see this script and just get the bullet points without all of the thought process around it, you can download the exact script right below. I've got the link in the description so that you can access it, you can use it. Now, one of the reasons this works so well in real estate is because everybody is a potential customer. Everybody wants to own a home. Everyone wants to live, for the most part, they want to live in the best house that they can possibly afford. So based on what they want and their practical constraints, that's where they want to live, right? So since everybody's in that category, you can have this conversation really with anybody at any time. Back to that analogy, it's like everyone is holding a card. They want to live somewhere. And right now, they're doing the best they can, but if they had somebody help them, maybe they could do even better. The great thing about real estate is that everybody's life is in a transition, right? Life goes up, it goes down, it takes unexpected turns. Sometimes their financial situation gets wildly better or wildly worse, or just different in a way that forces them to make a change. So either one of those factors or the interplay of those factors could change at any given point and create a situation where anybody could be your ideal client. In fact, if you look at the statistics, anywhere between 5 and 15% of people are going to move this year, whether you talk to them or not, whether you help them or not, they're going to move. They're going to buy, they're going to sell, right? So it's about separating who's in that category versus who's going to buy or sell next year or in the coming years, or if there's a condition in their life that's going to change that now is going to bring them back into that category. So you can become aware that it's the right time to help them buy, sell, move, do the thing that's going to help them get the house that they want and help you get the commission that's going to make the difference to you. So in order for you to help someone, there's 3 things that you've got to figure out together so that you can help them when the time is right with the thing that they want. Ready? First thing is that you've got to figure out why would they move, right? And that has to do with some element of pain or some problem in their life that would give them a reason to move, or some aspect of pleasure, right? There's some spectrum of desire about moving away from the things that they don't want towards the things that they want. And those would be the reasons why they would move, right? And then that's balanced with the reasons why they wouldn't move, right? And that has to do with their constraints. What are the things holding them in this position, holding them in this home, whatever their situation is, what's holding them back right now, right? And to help them optimize those 2 things, to figure out how can they use what they have, how can they move through their constraints towards what they want. That's the art of being a great solution-oriented realtor, right? You can start to solve those problems for them. And then the third thing is to figure out what are you guys going to do about it so that you can put together a plan, even if the plan is one-sided, even if it's just you helping them with a little bit of their permission to help them along the way. If you can do that, then you can really make a difference in their life by helping them actually move and do the thing that they want to do. By the way, let me give you a tip. I like to use the word move instead of saying buy or sell, right? Moving is a very high level concept, right? You're just going from point A to point B, and it really gets down to the baseline of doing what they really want to do. Buy or sell, each one of those terms is a little bit more complicated in their mind, right? So maybe some people are scared of those terms, maybe they're not, maybe they're thinking of other factors that are involved in that. So when I'm starting a conversation, I like to use the word move because it just simplifies things. It sounds very casual, very conversational. And it really, right now, it's not about buying or selling. It's about helping them go from point A to point B in their life and make the best of that process. All right, so in order to use a script, you have to be talking to someone that wants to talk to you, right? Or at least they're willing to keep talking with you. So the best way to do that is to not trigger their defenses. See, as humans, we all have defense systems, and we're really good at figuring out when should we defend ourselves from something we don't want to be a part of, right? We'll put up our shields, we'll use lies, objections, excuses to get out of a situation that doesn't feel comfortable or controllable. So in order for this to be effective, you got to be talking to someone that wants to talk to you. And when does that happen? People want to talk to you when you can help them do something that they're looking to do. So rather than trying to use specific words and phrases to disarm people or trick people or anything like that, it's much easier and more effective to get your own psychology right, to get your own heart right, and to put yourself in a mentality of, I'm trying to help. I'm here to help. I'm using love. I'm using abundance, generosity. I'm really coming from a place of adding value and trying to help this person improve their life. And when you've got that straight in your mind, then the rest of it comes pretty naturally. And when you've got that straight in your mind, people are going to want to talk to you. They're going to be receptive. They're going to be open because they know that there's no reason to close up and be guarded because you're trying to actually help them. So the fastest way to do that is to give yourself a checkup from the neck up and get your psychology right and really tap into your highest and best version of yourself when you're talking with someone and try to live up to that every step of the way, and they will feel it, it'll resonate with them, and they will engage with you at their highest level. Even if you're doing something as simple as making a phone call or, having a casual conversation, these things are super important and they can make a big difference in the way that people receive the questions. Okay, so let's get to the script. The first step in the script is to understand their current situation, right? Now, there's a lot of things that you could ask to understand their current situation, but I'm going to give you a recommendation, some words that you can use that are very casual and will still tell you everything that you want to know about the conversation. The first question is, where do you live? Tell me about it. So you want to know what their situation is, and you're leaving it open-ended when you say, hey, tell me about it. You want a little bit of the story, right? People aren't likely to go on rambling on that conversation, but it will direct the conversation to the topic of real estate in a way that's personal, relevant to them, in a way that's casual, in a way that is very normal, right? So you're bringing up the topic, getting it on topic, and you're figuring out what's going on. And their answer to that question, when you say, where do you live? Tell me about it, right? They're going to give you a lot of useful information. From their answers to that question, you're going to know if they are renting or if they own a property, or it'll tell you the relative price points that they're operating in. And it's going to give you a large data set just from even a quick answer, right? If they just name the neighborhood, then you're going to get a lot of information from that. Now, while you're on this first step of clarifying their current situation, you can casually dig in just a little bit deeper. Hey, tell me a little bit more. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. How long have you been living there? So are you guys who's your builder? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever the conversation is that you need to clarify that a little bit casually, right? Depending on the context of the situation, you may not need to get into a lot of detail, but you can figure out a little bit about their current situation so that you know where they're at before we get into step 2. Now, remember, every time somebody tells you something, you've got to be affirming them, supporting them, encouraging them to tell you more and to tell you the truth, and letting them know that you're here to help them. You're not judging them. You're not against them or anything like that. So whatever they tell you, you back them up. You get their back. You help them feel supported. You reward them for telling you the truth in that little bit of the conversation. The next step is to figure out how they like it, right? So after we've taken the time to understand their current situation and we've affirmed their situation so that they know that we're supporting them, and it might sound something like this where you say, hey, so where do you guys live now? And they say, oh, we live over in XYZ neighborhood. And you say, oh my gosh, that's great. I love that neighborhood. How do you guys like it? Right? So now you've affirmed them, and now you're asking them some sort of judgment about the neighborhood, right? In a very positive, supportive way, right? How do you guys like it? And when you ask that question, you're not listening to their words, you're listening to their tone. In fact, you're specifically listening to any possible hesitation that they might have, right? Because if they pause and they hesitate and they say, well, they've told you a lot with that pause, right? Or on the contrary, if they immediately just say, oh my God, we love it, or they say like, oh, I hate it, whatever. If there's no hesitation, then you now know that they have clarified how they feel about it in the moment. But if there's hesitation, then they're immediately telling you that they would like to change something, or they might like to change something, but maybe they're not quite sure how to do it. Now, you're going to use the same set of questions to continue to diagnose, but in your mind, you've already kind of split them off into 2 categories. And if they hesitate, then it's a high likelihood you'll be able to help them move sometime very, very soon. So whatever they tell you, the next thing to do is to ask them about the backstory of how they ended up there, right? Because that's going to tell you their thought process. It's going to give you the history of their constraints. It's going to give you all of the information to understand why they did what they did already. And then if that's now changing, you're going to know where they're coming from and why they might change, right? So in a casual conversation, that might just be as simple as asking someone like, oh, that's interesting. So how did you guys end up in that house? What's the story there, right? And then you pause and you let them talk and tell you the story, and you're listening for all of their reasons, motivations, for everything that brought them to this point where they picked this house thinking that they were going to be happy in this house, thinking about accomplishing XYZ. And then in a minute, we're going to see how well the reality has lived up to their expectations, and to see if now maybe they're thinking something that could be a little bit different. So here's some supporting questions that can help you in this step of getting the backstory straight, right? So you ask them, what's the story there? How'd you guys end up in that house? You say, how long have you been living there? You can say, what was it about the house that made you choose that home? You can say, well, what other options did you consider and why, right? Depending on how much time you have in the conversation, if you're just calling a lead, you may not have time to get into all that depth. But if you're talking to someone and they're really opening up with you, even if it's in a very, casual setting, like a small talk at a waiting room or something like that. You can get into some of these questions, and when they start to tell you their story and the reasons why they did what they did, it starts to really show you where they're at with their desires and their constraints. So then the next step is to figure out, how well is this home living up to the hopes that they had when they moved into the home, right? How well is it living up to the hopes that they have for their life right now? And to figure out if they'd like to do something different if they could. So here's a couple of questions to help you get the answers to those questions. First thing you can say is as simple as, well, what do you like about the house? You could ask things like, was it what you were hoping for? Is there anything you'd change about the house or the neighborhood if you could? What else, right? You can just ask an open-ended, tell me more. What else? Is there anything else? And let them just talk until you understand their reasons and how they feel about their current situation and how it's working for them. Another great question to ask here is, have you ever thought about moving? And just see what they say. Odds are, like most people, they think about it all the time, but it's a complicated conversation. So the next step is to find their constraints, right? People would live in a mansion on the beach every single time if they didn't have any practical constraints, right? But the reality is we're constrained by our income, by our family, by our life, by our commute. We've got all these things that are limiting our options. So we kind of need to know what are their constraints that they're operating with. And maybe you can help them do more of what they want given the constraints that they have, because you are an expert in this field and this is what you do. Now, before we get into the questions that are designed to surface their constraints, we need to introduce you to a concept called a smokescreen, right? And this is an answer that is a safe answer. It's not their real reason, but it's an acceptable reason. It's a safe reason. It's a reason that makes them look good. It's a reason that doesn't expose any real problems. And it's a socially acceptable reason, right? And this is where you're likely to run into those, where the first thing they tell you is probably not the real reason, right? So when you're talking about constraints and you're trying to get your head around why they haven't done the thing that they want to do, you're going to be prepared to dig in a little bit deeper. You're going to want to try to find 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons why they haven't done the thing that they want to do, because it's usually not until you get to the 3rd, 4th, or 5th reason that they're starting to tell you the real reason. And if you don't know the real reason, you'll be chasing all of these other things, trying to help them with something that really wasn't the thing that was holding them back to begin with. So as we start to identify their constraints, remember, we've been affirming and supporting them and said like, okay, great. No, I totally get it. The house is good for you, but right now it's starting to feel a little small now that you've had 2 more kids. I get it. I can totally relate. But tell me, what's been holding you back? Why haven't you guys made a move already? And then whatever they tell you, just say, oh, okay, no, that makes perfect sense. Is there anything else that's holding you back? And then let them give you an answer, affirm that answer, and then say, what else? What are some other reasons that you haven't moved yet? Once they've given you a few reasons, you can even throw in a time frame to help them start to tell you the reality of the situation, right? So you can say like, oh, do you think it's possible that you guys might even move this year? Or do you think that's a lot further down the road? What can also happen is they can just give you reason after reason after reason after reason. And this might be a warning sign that they are just unclear. And sometimes you can help them clear things up. Sometimes it's not worth your time to do that. But you need to start to figure that out right about here. And a great way to do that is by asking them, ooh, that sounds complicated. Have you guys totally given up on making a move? When you ask someone if they've totally given up, people don't like to give up. So that's when the switch starts to change in their mind and they start thinking of, well, here's what it's really going to take. Right? And sometimes they'll just say, no, I just got to get my wife on board. Or, as soon as we stop paying for XYZ, we'll have the cars paid off next year and then our credit scores will jump. That's when they start telling you the real reasons. And now you can start tracking along with the real possible solutions that could help them. Another tip, if they keep just giving you reasons why they haven't moved, is to say, whew, that's tough. Sounds like you guys are probably never going to move, huh? When you say that, they will likely correct you and start telling you when they would actually move, right? And they say, well, we're not going to move until, Johnny graduates, or not until I retire, or, I'll move if they let me work from home full time. When you say it's never going to happen, then many times they'll tell you the real reasons when it might happen and in their mind what they're waiting for. A few more things that you can dig into if you have the time in the conversation is you can start to ask specific pain point questions. You can say like, well, hey, how do you guys like the HOA over there? How's the parking? What are the schools like? And if there's anything that you know is a frequent pain point, either in your market or in that area specifically, you can just ask them, right? And you're doing this a lot of times, you're trying to help them, but you're also gaining data as a realtor. And so you can frame it up that way. And you can say, this is really fascinating for me. I appreciate you taking the time to like give me your thoughts, because I'd like to know what other people are thinking about their neighborhood, about their home, about the area, because this really helps me when I'm talking with my clients. So, it kind of gives you another angle so that it's not all about them and they don't feel cornered. You're actually building your expertise at the same time. You're getting information about how they feel about things, and you're getting ways to help them. So as you uncover their constraints, you're going to realize that they could be a few different things, right? They could be financial constraints. They could be timing constraints. They could be indecision constraints. It could be, just confusion, or maybe they're not on the same page with other people in their family. The more you can identify what's really going on, the more you realize there are things that you can help them with, and maybe some things that you can't help them with, right? Or at least not right now, some things that maybe they have to sort out. And so what you're trying to do through this whole process is to figure out what are the things that you could do to help them and to get their permission to start helping them. Because as soon as you start helping them with their next real estate goal, you've become their realtor. That's the moment that it happens. And as long as you continue helping them do the next thing they want to do in real estate, you're the realtor, they're working with you. And it doesn't matter if it takes 18 months for the plan that you come up with together to take effect, and that's when the commissions come in. You've been their realtor the whole time, and you're the one that helps solve the problem. And it's one of the best, most powerful things that you can do for people. So you're using these questions to help sort them into different categories in your mind and to find different ways of helping them, right? There's a couple of different places this could take you. Maybe you find out that they're ready to move right now, actually. Maybe it's been on their mind. Maybe they were talking with their spouse this weekend about how the fact that they need to get the house ready to put it on the market. And because you asked them these questions, you started to uncover these needs, and it's the perfect time to work together. That one's super easy to identify, right? Maybe you found out that, hey, you know what? They're not going to move until Johnny graduates in 3 years. And so what I need to do is put them in the CRM with perfect notes about what they're looking for, what they're looking to do, and check in with them every few years. And you need to make sure that you're there when Johnny graduates to grab that listing. Or maybe what you realized is that they're just confused and they're not sure if they want to move, but maybe they will. And depending on how you size that up, you might want to follow up with them more often or let them go. But in every scenario, right, there's something that's holding them back. And if you can find some way of helping them along the way, and then if you can tie that to a tool or an expertise that you have, you now have an action plan to help them in their journey towards the next step that they want to do. And if that action plan, if it has check-in moments, you're going to be in front of them at the right time, and you're going to be able to help them when the time is right. Here's a couple of things that you can do. Number one, if you can get them into a powerful CRM and let that CRM continue to communicate with them, right? Let's say it's sending them properties as an example. This is why it's so critical to use one that's going to give you behavioral alerts. So if they've gone 6 months without opening any of your emails, and then all of a sudden they start opening all of your emails, that's a really good time to check in with them, right? If you've got them on a drip campaign for emails or text messages, and they start to respond or they start to open when they weren't in the past, now you know all of that stuff was setting you up for this moment, and this is the moment to reach out to them that made the whole process worthwhile, right? So you're tying together their needs with an action plan and a way to follow up with them, and you really just need their permission. And there's a few things that you can do to get that permission and to start putting it into practice in a way that they're on board with. Here's a few great suggestions. My favorite thing to do is to start sending them homes that are what they said they'd be looking for in the future, right? And you say, hey, tell you what, I'm gonna keep my eyes open for some homes that you guys might like whenever the timing's right. And I'm just gonna start sending them to you. That way you guys can kind of keep your finger on the pulse, and you know roughly what things cost and where they are and what they're going for, the styles, all those types of things. And if you feel like it's time to do something, you can just let me know, and you've already created this data set in your mind that you can use to start comparing options. So why don't I just start sending you some emails and you can start to follow along with what's happening in the market so that when the time is right, you guys know what you're looking to do. That's a great talk track to use because it directly ties them into your CRM if you've got a good one, and that allows you to keep your finger on their pulse for the rest of the relationship until it's time to do something together. Or maybe the most helpful thing you can do is to set them up with an automated home valuation so that they can track along with their home's current value and they can start to have an informed perspective around what their home would sell for and to follow along with market shifts and market fluctuations so that they can be informed when it's time to go sell their house. Or maybe if they said, hey, you know what? We love the house. We're never going to move. Things can change in their life, right? So you just want to give yourself an open door into that conversation and say, well, hey, this has been so insightful for me. Thanks for sharing your perspective on the area, the neighborhood. Would it be all right with you if I just checked in with you, maybe, every so often just to see if anything's changed in the neighborhood, to see how things are going? I have a lot of clients interested in the neighborhood, and it's always nice to know when people are happy and when they're not so happy in the neighborhood, just so I can give people good advice along the way. And that gives you a great reason to check in with them once a quarter, every 6 months, once a year, whatever your rhythm might be. You can just check in with them and say like, hey, I know you guys love that neighborhood. What's the latest? How's the HOA situation? What's the school? What's the parking? Whatever's going on with them, you can check in and you can uncover pain points that maybe weren't a pain for them before, or maybe it is now. And they just say, you know what? I'm so glad you called. We were just talking the other day. I think we might need a bigger place. Turns out we got a surprise baby on the way, right? But you've got a reason to check in with them and to stay in contact and to keep that relationship going and to keep it healthy. So if you'd like to get this exact script, we've got a link to it down below in the description so you can get the script, use it, save it, have it for later, adapt it, make it your own. Just click below, you'll find the link there. So even more important than this conversation is the way that you stay organized and follow up, right? So that's the phase 2, and I'll show you how you can scale that up to almost unlimited people using a smart system inside of a smart CRM. So I'm gonna have some additional videos coming out to show you exactly how to do it, to build on some of the psychology behind this. So there's a lot more depth. So if you got some value out of this, make sure that you're subscribed so that when those videos come out, you're notified, or depending on when you're seeing this, they may be linked either in a video around here or in a playlist. So thanks again. Hope you got some value out of it, and we'll see you next time.